Distinguished guests, ladies and gentlemen, thank you very much for that very warm welcome, and thank you, VJ, for the introduction. It is a wonderful pleasure to be with you this evening on this occasion. I hope you can understand my accent, being a New Zealander. We like to think, as New Zealanders, that we have a better accent than the Australians. Are there any Australians in the audience today? We think we speak better English than the Australians. I hope you don't mind if I use these particular things, because at the age of 55 the old eyesight does start to go a little bit, so maybe it's time for me to become a cricket umpire or something like that. But I was just watching that DVD clip of myself playing many years ago. It does bring back some wonderful memories, and it's fair to say that I stand here in front of you looking very different from that particular film clip. And I will assure you, ladies and gentlemen, that it is in fact me standing here. Just to clarify any situation, it is in fact me, although I was just a little bit confused before I came over here to India, in which I'm spending 50 wonderful days here in Delhi. But I was a little confused because back home in Christchurch, where I live, my next door neighbour has an 8-year-old son. And this 8-year-old and a couple of his mates came over to home on their bikes. The 8-year-old hid by the side of the garage, pushed his mates forward, and they knocked on the door, and I answered it. And one of his mates says, "Does Richard Hadlee live here?" And I says, "Yes, he does." And his other mate said, "Are you his father?" So I guess I've got to come to terms with the fact that the old ageing process has in fact caught up with me, as it does with us all. I suppose I am a bit of a has-been now. I had 19 years of playing first-class cricket, 18 years of international cricket, and clearly sport has been a wonderful part of my life. But when I retired in 1990, I went into the commentary box for a period of time, and at Lancaster Park in Christchurch, a friend of mine came up with his 6-year-old son, and he said to his 6-year-old son, "Get Sir Richard's signature." And the 6-year-old looked at me, looked at his father, and he said, "Oh, Dad, I don't want a commentator, I want a real cricketer." But the subject this evening, ladies and gentlemen, what makes a champion? And I've got to say, it is a very interesting subject, one that'll be debated, I guess, for a long time. But I would like to say that coming from New Zealand, we are a very small country of 4 million people. 80 million sheep, but 4 million people. And we have produced world champions, world record holders, and gold medalists. And as VJ said, we are known, of course, for our famous rugby team, the All Blacks. Traditionally, historically, the All Black rugby team is highly regarded and respected all around the world. Generally, when we play, we win. And that is something quite tremendous. Sport has put New Zealand on the map. It has given us world recognition. And I tell you what, if we win the Cricket World Cup in a few weeks, it will give us even more recognition. So just watch this space over the next few weeks. But when I look back at my sporting career, there were, of course, some wonderful moments, some great highlights, but there were also times of disappointment. And these are the things that sports people have to get over very quickly. Sport, as I say, has been a wonderful part of my life. It's allowed me to represent New Zealand at a sport. That's something that I'm very proud of. To tour the world, to all the major playing cricketing countries, the memories, the friendships that one gets during that time. And to serve New Zealand cricket during the 1980s, which was regarded as the golden era in the history of New Zealand cricket, where we remained undefeated at home in Test series during that time, having beaten everyone as well. And it's still great to have an involvement in the game, to be able to put something back in the way of selection and launching the careers of young players today. But it all started from somewhere. And when you look at what makes a champion, I believe it goes back to when you're a youngster. And I was very fortunate, as VJ mentioned in the introduction, to have been brought up in a family cricketing environment. Yes, my father played cricket for New Zealand, he captained New Zealand. I had brothers that also represented New Zealand. But as a youngster, we had the gear, the equipment, the encouragement to play the game. We had the environment to enjoy the game of cricket. And like many youngsters, I lived in a dream world, a land of make-believe. And I believe that is very important for youngsters, to sort of visualise something happening in the future or to be their heroes of the day. I remember as a youngster going into the garage at home, I put my father's cricket cap on, I put the pads on, the baggy gloves, and I put a cricket ball in a string or in a sock, and I tied that sock to a piece of rope and attached it to the rafter. So I had a ball on a string. And I hit that ball again and again and again. Never got out, always scored 100. Wonderful moments of make-believe. And when I felt that I'd scored that imaginary test 100 in the garage, I would lift my bat up and wave it to the imaginary crowd, because I'd seen that. And that's what I was trying to do. And on a fine day, I'd go out into the backyard at home, and we had a lawnmower, and I'd cut out a piece of grass. We had a roller, so I would roll that cut grass. So I was pretending to be the groundsman preparing a test match pitch in the backyard. And because I was such a small fella and a skinny little fella in those days, and my hand was too small to bowl a cricket ball, I bowled a golf ball. And I tried to hit one wicket. And behind the wicket was the brick wall of the garage. And if the golf ball missed the wicket, which happened frequently, the golf ball would bounce back off the garage, and I would dive and take a one-handed catch. As though I was the wicket keeper, somebody at first slipper caught and bowled. Always got 20 wickets, never lost a test match against Australia. Wonderful moments of make-believe. But that was the starting point at round about 5, 6 years of age. At 12 years of age, I used to sell programs outside the main stadium in Christchurch to the incoming spectators. At 16 years of age, along with 7 or 8 other young people, helped operate the giant scoreboard that was on the embankment at Lancaster Park. And I often looked out from that scoreboard over the playing arena when a test match was in progress, and I said to myself, wouldn't it be wonderful one day to be out there playing a real test match for my country? 5 years later, at 21 years of age, that land of make-believe that I'd lived in for such a long period of time did in fact become a reality. And as my career evolved or developed, lessons were learned. I learnt that talent gets you so far, that you cannot rely on talent alone. Talent needs to be converted into performance, and to do that, you need to have skills. I also learnt that there is no room for complacency or comfort zones. That creates mediocrity. Mediocrity is second rate, and quite frankly, second rate is not good enough. And clearly, if a sports person relaxes or switches off, you are at your most vulnerable because you are not expecting the unexpected. Mistakes are made. Opponents will seize the opportunity to gain that advantage. To get better and to become more competitive, skills need to be repeated again and again and again to be perfected. Now, ladies and gentlemen, I can stand here and tell you that I bowled 110,000 cricket balls during my first-class international career. It's fair to say that there's a lot of repetition in that. But of course, what I was trying to do was to perfect that skill to become clinically efficient. And I think that is a wonderful saying, to become clinically efficient. Now, Carl is probably sitting here listening to me saying, what the hell is bowling a cricket ball? Think of baseball and chucking it, right? You know, the bloke that pitches, that was my job. I did that 110,000 times at the highest level. No wonder I'm tired. But I also tried to visualise things happening during my career. In other words, I tried to put myself in a position of it happening. And to give you a little example of that, in 1988, I was on 373 test wickets, along with England's Ian Botham. I was equal with him. And I wasn't going to play my next game for 6 months further down the track. And it was the tour of India. at that time. I needed one more wicket to become the world record holder. I had plenty of time to visualise and think about the next time, the next opportunity that I would get on the field of play to bowl my next ball to give myself that opportunity to become number one in world cricket. It was at the Chinnaswamy Stadium in Bangalore. I had never been there. And so I went into books and I researched and looked for a photograph of the ground to create a picture of that particular ground. I knew on past experience here in India that the pitch was going to be brown looking. It would have no grass on it. That invariably tourists, when they come here, they lose the toss and bowl first, as India bat into 2-3 days. I knew that a fellow called Chris Srikanth was the Indian opening batsman. I knew his technique, I knew how he played, I'd bowled to him before, I'd got him out before, and I knew that he batted in a blue helmet. On the 12th of November 1988, I came to Bangalore, and the things that I'd seen and visualised were on track, until my dream was totally shattered. Srikanth came out to bat in a white helmet. And next to him was the other opening batsman called Aaron Lowell. Never heard of him. But I've been working with him since, if you've been watching headlines today. But I was distracted. And I think the point that I'm trying to make here with visualisation, I became too narrow-minded in what this picture was trying to create. I didn't take in all the other things. And when you visualise, you need to have a wider picture of everything so that when you're in that position, you're not going to be distracted. As it turned out, Aaron Lowell became that world record wicket, and a few balls later, Chris Srikanth did as well. There were many times that I kept questioning myself as to whether I could go beyond what I thought I was capable of achieving. Now, something that happened during my career, having spent 10 years in England playing English county cricket for Nottinghamshire, something hadn't been done for 17 years and people said it could never ever be done before. And that was the English cricket county double. And the double is capturing 100 first-class wickets during the season and scoring 1,000 runs in that same season. The double, the 100 and the 1,000. And I knew I had 24 matches to try and achieve this particular goal. But I also realised that I'm not going to play in 24 games. There are too many unknowns. So I worked out a budget or a calculation on playing 20 games in the season. Simply 5 wickets a game, 50 runs a game. Very easy mathematical equation. But of course, what happened if I didn't get 5 wickets in that game? Or I didn't get a bat? Or I got out for naught and didn't get those 50 runs? Every day, the budget, the goal changed. So I had to be flexible. Well, as it turned out, the wicket tally was okay. I was on target with the wicket tally, but I was always behind on the run tally. And Nottinghamshire took the trip down to Lord's, the home of cricket in London, to play Middlesex. And we bowled Middlesex out for 168. You following me with this, Cal? It's all very technical stuff. Anyway, we bowled them out for 168. Good performance. And when we batted, we had lost 4 wickets for 17 runs. And Clive Rice, my captain, a great friend of mine, he said to me, Paddles, my nickname because of my large feet, he said to me, Paddles, go out there and score a double 100. And I said, Ricey, what are you talking about? You know, we've bowled them out for nothing, we're in all sorts of trouble, you're out for a naught, and you're telling me to go out there and score a double 100 against one of the best bowling attacks in county cricket. He says, go out there and do it. Well, I walked out to bat, and 6 hours later I came back with 210 not out. Ricey had put a thought in my mind that I had never, ever considered before. And that's what I mean. Can a person go beyond what they think they are capable of achieving? Perhaps just a few other thoughts. People talk about mental toughness. And clearly that is huge. And I stand here in front of you having a tremendous amount of admiration for Australian sports people because quite frankly, they have it and many people desperately want it but sadly lack it. They have an uncanny way of winning games or pinching games in the last minute in so many different sports. And to me, mental toughness takes 2 forms. And that is, as VJ mentioned in his introduction, when against the odds you can lift your performance to win. You find something special to be able to succeed. But it's also about handling the situation when it's all too easy, and having the ability to be able to be ruthless and efficient and to play your opposition out of the game. Because as I said, if you get in those comfort zones, you can be at your most vulnerable. My job as a bowler in the game of cricket was not only to get batsmen out, it was to destroy the opposition, to help win games, and sometimes end the playing career of some players. That was my job. But I also had a little mantra, a little card that was in my cricket coffin, my cricket bag, my gear bag. And key words were there to remind me of things to keep me focused. And I just want to share with you just 4 of those words, actually, not all of them, but just 4 of them. And they were, in simple terms, rhythm, off-stump, desire, and lily, which is not a flower. And just to tell you about that, rhythm, because bowling a cricket ball was about rhythm, timing, and coordination. It was about being relaxed. If I was stiff and tense, my body wasn't going to function for me. So with that rhythm word, I had to be relaxed. The off stump was my target area, where I was trying to get that ball again and again and again to give me my consistency factor. So here I was trying to be relaxed and trying to be consistent. Desire, my job was to get the batsman out. In other words, do my job. And Lily, Dennis Lillee, I'm sure you, as cricket follows, if you're out there, you will know the name of Dennis Lillee, arguably the greatest fast bowler in the history of the game. He was my role model, the bloke that I looked up to, admired, respected, because he had credibility. He had been there, he had done that. He was big, strong, aggressive, marvellous skills, great technique, intimidated the batsman with a little bit of chatter, called gamesmanship. But he got you out. He did his job. So what a wonderful role model for me. I was motivated for a number of different reasons. And what motivated me wouldn't necessarily motivate other people. But very quickly, I was motivated because of competition. I wanted to be the best. I was motivated by a determination to prove a point. If my professionalism was questioned or somebody had a go at me, I wanted to prove to them that I was right. And I've never forgotten what my father said to me, who sadly passed away only some months ago at the age of 90. But during my playing career, he said to me, as he did to my 4 brothers, he says, "Richard, whatever you do, take pride in your performance. Do it to the best of your ability. Be happy with your performance, even if somebody does it better. You can only give 100%. I was also motivated because of statistics, and cricket is about statistics and records. And I was also motivated because of rewards, which is recognition of one's performance. Ladies and gentlemen, finally, a quote from an unknown source. We cannot choose to be born. We cannot choose our parents. We cannot choose our country. We cannot choose our history. But in a choiceless society, we can choose to live honourably or dishonourably. We can live courageously or in cowardice. We can live with purpose or with adrift. We can live with importance or with triviality. But in the end, forming our destiny is what ambition is all about. Thank you.
Well, good evening, and it's great to be a little ways from home. I'm not quite as far as you are, but you're here for a while. It's interesting you talk about, a little bit older in your eyes. Actually, it happens a lot earlier than your 50s, because I'm 45 and my glasses are not far away from me either, so I feel your pain. But fortunately, I can still see close. I just can't see anything else. So if it seems like I glance down and I know what I'm looking at, that's the truth. But if I look out there and it seems like I can't see you, that's the truth as well. I am very excited to be here to talk to you about a tremendous subject. And it was interesting listening to you because some of the things I think I understood, and you say you don't think I've seen you before. I might have seen you before, but I didn't know what I was watching. Because I saw highlights of cricket before, and they said the greatest ones. You must have been one of them. And it just illustrates, and when you talk about a country like New Zealand that's taken pride in their sports, it's just something like I talk about with India. You have 4 million people, and I think that's what we have maybe in this hotel when you compare it to India, or at least the land space of this hotel. And I remember you talked about your father. I think back to my father used to always motivate us to be the best that we could be as kids, because my parents are both teachers. And, kids always, when I speak to kids all the time in schools, they say, well, gosh, did you ever get in trouble? I said, well, no one really knew because I had detention in between classes. So, because my parents always taught in the same schools I went to, so I got that straight early. And I tell you, being a champion is something that people come from so many different backgrounds. And that's what's so special. Because I came from a wonderful family. My parents were both coaches, and I went to school, and they coached us growing up, and they encouraged us. And growing up, I never thought that I would be a championship athlete, because I had 2 older brothers that were successful athletes. One brother was a professional football player, real football, not the one we claimed. And the other brother was a track athlete. And my younger sister was a track athlete as well, and then there was me. You know how, I always explain it this way, you know how when you have, a dog has a litter of dogs, or puppies, and then there's one like the rut, like the one little one that's kind of pushed out of the way, that's fighting to get that last little bit of milk. That would be me. So I learned at a very young age what it was like to not be successful in sports. And I tell you something, when you're 15 years old and the most important thing in your life is to be taller than your mother, then you have a long way to go. So but what I did, I found out, and what I learned, the most important things I learned about being a champion was during that period as a kid growing up, because my parents encouraged me to be the best that I could be. And that's something that we can all learn from no matter what we're involved in. I always kid my mother all the time. I tell her, I said, gosh, I love you so much because you are the world's greatest liar. Because she told me as a kid growing up that I would be somebody and I'd be great in athletics. And I knew, she always did it like this, and I used to wonder why as a kid, but I realized her fingers were crossed behind her back. So as I got older, though, I really learned that it wasn't about winning, because I was never going to win. Or I never won races as a kid. I was always set goals for myself to be successful. So, I might be 7th place and I'm jumping up and down and everyone's saying, what's wrong with this kid? Is he crazy or something? But I might have had my best time. So I learned what it was like to focus on being the best you can be at a young age. Then all of a sudden, as I got older, I passed my mother. And then it was on to try to catch my younger sister, because she was still taller than I was when I was 16. And then I started to look beyond high school and look, hey, I'd like to try to go to college. And my parents said, work hard and study hard. Being teachers, that was so important to us. I continued to study hard and work hard so I could get a scholarship to college. And then things started to happen. I started to grow and become a little bit better. And then I became a state champion. And next thing you know, in my senior year in high school, I became a national champion, a national record holder, and made my first national team. It all happened so fast. And so all of a sudden, I started to look at the world, and I said, hey, I could go to the Olympics one day. And so I went to the university. I went to the University of Houston, and I had these lofty goals, and I sat down. I said, I'm going to conquer the world now, and I know what my plan is, and I know what I'm supposed to be. I'm going to be this great athlete, and I'm going to revolutionize things. Of course, all this is at 18. So I go into a meeting. The first day, I meet with my coach. And I sit down and I look him dead smack in the eye and I said, gosh, I'm really happy to be here and I'm excited. Of course, I'm the big man on campus now. And I just know it. And I told him, I want to run and be a great athlete, and I want to be a millionaire, and I never want to have a real job. This is going to be my job. And of course, I'm 18 years old, and we'd spent all of probably 15 minutes talking, and this is one of the first things I said. So he looked me dead in the eye, seriously, and I'm glad he paused for a few moments, and I learned later that's what he normally does. But glad he paused to think about that, because it was pretty presumptuous of a young kid to sit right there and say that. Well, he looked right at me and he says, well, you know, if you really focus on making the money and the fame, then it's never going to happen. But if you focus on being the best you can, then I think it can happen. You can be Olympic champion. So I learned, my first day I learned a tremendous lesson about being a champion. It's focusing on what is the most important aspect, and that is being the best you can be. So I trained that first couple of years. I just trained hard under the stadium when it rained or out. I was the last one to leave every day, barely made it to the training table to get dinner, because it took that hard work and discipline and focus. And that's what we had to do every day. So I go down in my second year in college. I'm 19 years old, and I go out to a meet, and I set a world record, my first world record, when I was just a kid. And he said, tremendous job, great job. And of course, I felt great about it, and everything was wonderful, and I'm doing well for my school. So I go to a meet a few weeks later, and I go into a competition where I'm running the 60 indoors and the long jump. Well, I win the 60, and I'm feeling great because I'm the youngest person in the final, and I win the race. So I go up to the long jump. I'm leading the long jump after 3 jumps. And I wasn't jumping that well, probably about 27, maybe 8:20 something. It wasn't great, but it wasn't bad. But I was winning the competition. And it was obviously I wasn't totally focused because I was winning. Well, he called me over to the edge of the stadium, and we walked down to the edge. He walked all the way down the steps, all the way down, and he called me over. And I thought he was going to say, well, in your next jump, I want you to do this. Well, he looked at me in my eye, and you know what? I remembered it was that, later on, I remembered it was that same look that he had when I said that I wanted to be a millionaire. And he said, you know, you're not really jumping that well, and obviously and apparently you've got all this figured out, so you really don't need me, so I'll let you take over. And he turned and walked up the stands and walked out of the stadium. And it hit me so strong, because I realized that when you get to the top, it becomes even more difficult. You have to still keep your focus, and being a champion is always being your best. It's the same exact message. Well, of course, being 19 years old and a recent world record holder, it took me a while to figure that part out. That particular day, I said, how dare him run out of the stadium on me like this? And I went down on the next jump, and I had a tremendous jump and missed the world record by 1 centimeter. And out of nowhere, he came running back down the stadium again and said, okay, we have 2 more jumps. Now we can set this record. And it was just amazing how he was so excited. And that's when I got the message of what being a champion and being your best all the time, no matter what it takes, and continue to focus. So I went on, and I didn't set the world record that day, but I learned a tremendous lesson. And that was a lesson that I never forgot. And by the way, he never left the stadium again the rest of my career. But it set me up for later that year. I went out and I had a tremendous year, and I won the long jump in the 100 meters. And I was just thinking one day about my idol, Jesse Owens, who was an idol I met when I was a kid. And I said, I wonder what it was like for him to win 4 gold medals. I wonder if I could ever do that, because I was a sprinter and I did the same events. I met him, and of course, because I met him and I did the same events, I just figured I could do what he did. I was a young enough kid and brash enough to think that. So I went to my coach and I said, what do you think about me trying to do all 4 of those events in '84? This is 1981. And he says, well, I don't know. It's going to be a tough thing, but if you want to do it, we have to plan it out now and start thinking about it right now and try to do it. So I said, well, let's just see how it is, and I'd really like to do that. Well, I started to talk to everybody and different people, and everyone said there's absolutely no way. It can't be done. You'll get injured. You can't do it. You can't make the team. And so I heard 3 years of it just can't be done. But what we did is we set a plan, and it was a plan that each year I would add another event. So I was #1 in the world in the 100 and long jump in '81. Then I added the 200 the next year. Then I added all 3 of them the following year. Then it was the Olympic year. And I had to focus 100% on what I had to do. The training focus outside of the track, no distractions, because I had to make sure that everything was right in order to achieve that. And I had to execute, because the 100 meters and the 200 meters are totally different events, even though they seem the same, but they're totally different. And the long jump is different altogether. So what did I do? How did I figure out a way to make sure those events are different? Well, I had different shoes for each event. The 100 meters was one pair of shoes, the 200 was one, and the long jump was a different one. So my focus became whatever shoes I wore, that's where I put my energy. And then believe in yourself no matter what. Because I always had a theory that you're never going to win all the races. And people all the time say, gosh, we never saw you lose. I had a theory. You're going to lose races. We all know that. We've all lost competitions. We've all lost races. But my theory was never lose on TV, since people don't know that you ever lose. So make sure when there's a television camera there, you're always ready to rock and roll, okay? So I might have been like 48%, but I was 98% on TV. and then surround yourself with people that have the same type of motivation and attitude and focus. Whether they're at your level, whether they're better than you or not as good as you, just as long as they're motivated to be the best they could be. So I had teammates. And so it went year after year where we just focused on these events. And then all of a sudden I came up to 1983 and I competed at the Nationals and I won all 3 of those events. And I didn't go to the World Championships and I didn't do the 200. So the year started off, can he compete in all 4 of these events? And it was amazing because the year started where I had a great season, indoor season, and then all of a sudden people said, well, that's a possibility. So it's funny how the question switched for can you do it to what do you think will happen if you only get 3? Think about this, people. Stay with me now. People were asking me, would you be disappointed if you only won 3 gold medals? And I was just trying to figure out, how did we go from, going to the Olympics is a great thing, and all of a sudden we're saying you'll be disappointed with 3 gold medals. I didn't get that. But that's where it was, and that's where it was able to raise the expectation because of just mapping out this plan and focusing on winning the competitions and not getting wrapped up into every little meet or that great payday, but just really sticking to that plan and staying focused. So I go to the Olympic year and I get to the Olympic trials, and it was the first time when I realized after the trials I won all 3 events that I could actually do this thing. So when you go to the Olympics, it's a whole different thing. And I remember walking into the stadium for the first event, and of course it was 9 o'clock in the morning and the stadium was full, and there were 90,000 people there. And one of the athletes who was a gold medalist, I believe, in 76, Hadlee Crawford, was in my first round heat. And he says, wow, look at this. It looks great here. And I said, oh, yeah, we do this all the time. 90,000 people are always watching track meets. So I went through the competitions, and of course I went through the first one and the second one and the third one and the fourth one. But the thing that people don't realize is that during those competitions, I competed over a period of 8 days, and I had 1 off day. So after the first day, I won the 100 meters. The race ended at 7. Of course, you have drug testing and interviews and everything. So I didn't get home until about 11 o'clock. And I stayed in a home with my parents stayed there, my family. And I remember getting back there, and my mother said, well, dinner's on the table because we had a home and we had everything was set up and we had someone there to cook. Okay, so we get in there and this woman comes in ready to cook our food and everything. My mother's like, what is she doing here? I said, well, she's going to cook and clean and everything. And she said, excuse me, I did it all the way. She can clean this house, but I'm cooking this food, all right? So I have dinner, and I set my medal down and go to sleep because I had a 10 o'clock in the morning competition in long jump, and we have to be up 4 hours early. So I go to bed at 11. I have to be up at 6. Now, think about this. I just won the Olympic gold medal in the 100 meters, and I didn't have 1 second to really celebrate about it. I had to focus on the next event. The minute that race was over, I was already thinking about tomorrow. And so the next morning, you're up at 6, you compete again, and it went on for an entire week of staying focused. And that was one of the 4 most important components of staying focused. It wasn't about, I couldn't celebrate until the last day because one little slip up, you're in the Olympics. You can make that mistake, you could lose the race. So I stayed focused all the way through here, and of course I went on to win all 4 of those gold medals. And I remember of the 4 events, there was all a unique situation to them. The first one was the 100 meters. When I finished the 100 meters, I came up the steps and I went to Coach Tellez, and he went over to me and he said, congratulations, and he went up and he hugged me. And he's right in my ear as he was hugging me, he said, if you had really focused and come out of the blocks like you're supposed to, you would have set the world record today. And I was like, oh, that's interesting. I just won the gold medal. And here again, it was back to staying focused. And then he said, congratulations, good job. But it was that little subtle thing of like, keep your mind focused on the event. That's what he was really telling me in his own subtle way. The long jump, he said, I want you to go out and take 1 or 2 jumps, that's it, and rest for the next event. After you get 2 of it, I want you to jump well in the first event, first jump, get it over with. So we did that. So he said, okay, you did that well. The 200 meters, he said, control the turn. Make sure you control the turn, be in the lead because they'll be worried. So every single thing was thought out and planned out. And I had to do it that way. And then the relay was great because America was the best team. And the only thing I had to do was take the baton and not drop the stick. Could you have imagined having 3 medals and I get the stick and we're 10 yards ahead and dropping it? So being a champion is so many different elements. It's staying focused. It's hard working. It's having good teammates, people that are around you that can help you succeed. Also, people telling you the truth when you're not doing what you're supposed to do. Those are all elements that are so important. And I just think that without that environment and without my coaching, there's no way it would have happened for me. And I feel very fortunate about that. And so when I go out all the time, I talk to kids and I talk to people, and I remind them of something, and I'll close with this. I remind them, I say this one thing. I say, if life was easy, everybody would be good at it. It isn't supposed to be. So take on the challenge of being the best you can be, because that's how you become successful. Take on the challenge of being the best you can be. And the last thing, make sure you always look good on TV.